Rob Norman is supposed to be here, so I'm standing in for him so much to say because you must have seen Rob's photographs in the site and the invitations as well. I am not Rob and I can't speak like Rob. He has got a great sense of humor and he speaks very well. That's like Abhijit singing like Mukesh, isn't it? So what I've done essentially is I called up Rob and told him to give me a script and I will change it a bit to make it what I can speak in my own way. So what it means is this. So in a typical marketing language, you call it BOGOF, buy one, get one free, right? So here you have get Rob and get J-Man free today for you. So it's Rob's script, but it's my screenplay, dialogue and direction. So that's the context. Okay, so what's the story? The script. What I really wanted to speak to you is there are a lot of chaos, right? I mean, we talked about it in the sense the way the ecosystem has exploded across mobile, social and digital and across the board. In some sense, I think we're reaching a stage where we know the chaos and we also know what to do with it in a broad form. And I've sort of structured that across three things as layers, devices and consumers. I mean, to my mind, I'm clustering the chaos across these three types and I'm consciously using the word layers and not platforms because there's a huge difference between what platforms are and layers are. Let's talk about each one of them quickly. At a fundamental level, as what we call as the foundational layer are three types of utilities, simplicity and virality. Today, the businesses are built on these three platforms. Either you have search, social, mobile, commerce, each of them are utilities at this point of time today. And if you look at a company like Google, which has got a 60 billion revenue, but a 380 billion market cap, 6 times the sales revenue. It's primarily on the back of the potential for consumers to willing to pay, not really paying, but willing to pay. And therefore, what I call the consumer surplus is what is driving this entire ecosystem across utilities, simplicity, and virality. At the fundamental level, I've just put some examples to you. If you see some of the logos not being there, don't ask me why. We at least have these are the foundational layers we are living with today. Google, Amazon, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Twitter, whom we think are slowly getting into a situation of having a consolidation in terms of universes. And I've consciously used the word walled gardens as a reference point because each of them are in their own garden on the platform of internet, primarily because the consumers choose to be with Google and they come out of the garden, go to Amazon, come out of Amazon, go to Facebook. Each of these are their own walled gardens. That's the fundamental point which is keeping the system chaotic in some form or the other. What's happening in this is that there's a tremendous value exchange between the utilities each of these walled gardens are creating for the consumers and the bandwidth it is consuming as well. It's a massive consumer surplus today. I think it is estimated to be around 500 billion USD. It's growing at 25% year on year. So one would expect a trillion business next 3 to 4 years time built on the back of the consumer surplus across these 78 walled gardens, what we call as a foundational layer. And the eventual reality in all this is that it's the consumer that moves out of one garden to the other, right? So the control is with the consumer, not the walled gardens. That's the reality of this marketplace today. And what that has resulted is privacy issues, piracy issues, and the control. How many of you ever read the terms and conditions before signing up for Facebook? I don't think we have read it. But the reality is that you have accepted to give certain permission for others to use it in some form or the other. So that's the status of the reality today. And what this means is that it is sort of sending across trillions and tons of data into the marketplace. And that's leading to the adaptive layer on the top. Both permitted and unaware of your own knowledge that you're given this data is flowing across your behavior online, your transactions online, and its ability to segment consumers in different form beyond the standard demographics online. So there's an adaptive layer on top, which is funding the foundational layer at the bottom. The reality is that this data that's flown into the marketplace today is 9 times what a what a client used to have his own data 10 years back. 10 years back, we used to have our own data on whatever client's data is, and we used to make a communications plan. Today, the reality is that there's so much that data is available outside there. Most of the marketers are struggling to find a way in which I can understand the loads of data that are available in the marketplace outside. What it means is that in the adaptive layer, we have these kind of terminologies expanded today. There is programmatic, there is algorithms that has come in the marketplace there. Companies are building data marts, fragmentation of audiences in a big manner, good and bad, and the cry for efficiency. And whatever we do at this point of time today, speed, accuracy, systems, etc., is leading towards an adaptive layer of organizations driving efficiency, managing fragmentation, developing algorithms, building data marts, and more so talking about programmatic. And the reality is that many marketers at this point of time, it's possible that the cost of setting it up might not give them the dividend today, because it's not a simple job to do. And that again, coincidentally, is another $500 billion business. The reality is that we have two sides. One side is a consumer surplus of $500 billion. The other side is about the capability in managing big data. The other side, this is the tension we are going through today between the foundational layers and the adaptive layers of the marketplace. So, right. If I were to keep this as a construct, what we said is that Rob and I took a chance to say, let's take a leap of faith and stick our neck out and make some predictions. What we believe is these three things. One is the only way the stress between foundational layer and an adaptive layer can be managed is through real-time adaptive marketing. I think most of the marketers are using the language today in terms of relevant segments, timing, and geography. Programmatic is the solution to manage the layers, definitely, and we believe it's going to grow in a significant manner. And the recommendation engines like Netflix and Amazon kind of companies who's mining the big data at the back end to give you recommendations of what you want to do. I mean, if you have ever bought a book in Amazon, basis the book you have bought, it gives you recommendations, right? Because the next book to buy. So that's the culture that's building at the back end. So across these adaptive marketing, programmatic, and recommendations engines, we said these are the four broad tactics that will develop to manage this. One is programmatic will become significant, but with a portfolio of scarce inventory management, reserved inventory management, bulk inventory management, and biddable. All four will remain. I mean, it's a portfolio of these four things that we need to manage at this point of time. Flexibility with upfronts will increase hitherto, limited by speed of data delivery. This is largely US-centric, and we realize that at this point of time, people are spending less and less money on upfronts, but willing to hoard the money and manage dynamically on a quarterly basis because we have the data to manage it on a real-time basis. Traditional TV distributed on non-traditional devices will still continue to dominate because digital video revenues will continue to be there as it is for some more time, and that's the reality. And portfolio management of inventory between foundation layers and adaptive layers, what I'm calling it as native advertising, I'll spend some time about it slightly later, are the four broad trends that we can see that's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years' time. So let's spend some time on native advertising. I think it's critical because if some of you who are in the business of print here, there are some ray of hope. The problem with native advertising, it is important to get a sense why I'm talking about native advertising. It is for the desire for brands to have close to content and the publisher's desire to close to money, and that's what native advertising is trying to bridge. Today, we have a very deeply inefficient commercial model, but if somebody needs to sort of capitalize on the opportunity on the tension between the foundation and the adaptive layer, it is a huge opportunity. And I think print medium, which today at this point of time, we don't read paper as paper, but we read the content across different devices. And you share it quite more often than you have ever done when you're reading a newspaper. I've got huge opportunities to build on the native advertising platform in this. Okay, we'll now move to the devices. I think even in the earlier speech, we talked about it. Many people, I mean, this picture is from Myanmar. Many people in emerging markets, they don't even know that they are using internet. They believe that Facebook is internet because they have forgotten about the fact that there is something that is through which it's coming, and that's becoming an important trend. So large part of the population as we grow, as we move forward, will believe mobile is equal to internet. At the same time, I think last count, there are roughly around 1.5 million non-duplicated applications in the system across both Google and iTunes. Only 0.1% of them have more than 1,000 users. I think we have to keep a sense of what apps can do, what apps cannot do, because that's the reality of life, and it's because we are not able to engage with the consumers strong enough and long enough. Let's look at the other side. There are markets where device is not equal to network, because mobility has spread, and mobility has given internet to the marketplace everywhere, but the access is inconsistent. And we believe everything can be done through mobile phones. I'll just give you a quick example of how we compare some of the markets across the globe. China, India, and Indonesia are some of the markets in this part of the world has the lowest 3G penetration, and will probably continue to be that way for some time. The reality is that growth of smartphones will be much faster than the growth in which 3G or 4G can be delivered to some of the developing markets. So there is a tension between device and the network, but at the same time there is a possibility of mobile just becoming an internet. So we have to manage this dichotomy. That's the next biggest challenge we have. We have to live with this dichotomy. Some of the recommendations we believe to manage this dichotomy at this point of time. One is resident applications will become important with both offline and online streaming capabilities. It's a big trend where you download an app with almost all content that's possible in it there, videos to be played, engagements to be done and everything, and whenever there is a connection during online, you build on the app to engage with the consumer, but otherwise app is a good content provider for you even when you are offline. Pre-burned content with large storage capabilities is going to become a big thing once again. I just heard today Samsung is going to launch another 128 GB phone. It will become 256 GB phone, it will become 500 GB, it's not going to be a difficult proposition. So going forward, you will see good phones, lot of space, whole lot of content, and you can use it whenever you want to. And NFC with the Wi-Fi hotspots for session-based will become a norm in the future as well. So it's like whenever I want to connect, I connect, but I use the device otherwise to engage and entertain in the marketplace as well. So the third point is about the consumer, and they are continuing to be elusive. They take the decisions which we don't know. We leave the house to buy a product from, and when we reach the shop, you change your mind to buy some other product because a lot of things happen in between the journey, right? This is the biggest holy grail today, the dynamic customer decision journey. We talked about the 9 times data that's available in the marketplace outside the enterprise data. It is influencing the consumer at every stage of the journey. And almost everybody has thrown the hat into the ring, whether it is a McKinsey or Ogilvy or Kantar or Oracle or all the companies, both in the foundation layer and the adaptive layer, is putting the best bet in understanding the customer journey. If there is something which I think if each one of you should understand and focus on, I would put this as my strategic first bet to say understand the customer journey a lot better. What it means is that instead of going to the shop as a destination, now it's becoming a focal point, right? I mean, I can do a lot of things in the shop floor. I can have activation, I can have engagement, I can have near-field communication, I can do a lot more to influence the consumer to change his decision to buy some other product from what he thought he was going to buy when he left the house. This is happening across all types of stores, whether it's groceries or retail malls or high-value items or low-value items, it does not really matter. It's becoming the focal point for the consumer. That leads to e-commerce, right, automatically. I believe I was reading an article yesterday, more than 60% of e-com in India is through mobile already. So it is going to be a big play when it comes to managing the focal point at this point of time. I think the trend is much more optimistic than ever before. There are no fear of payment or fraud. People are not looking at it as a cheap alternative. And the only barrier to growth of e-commerce is purely logistics and nothing else. And I think if we fix the logistics, this can be a big ray of hope in the future. So just 2 charts to summarize this. The next 5 years, whoever turns 20 would have never read a newspaper, would not have bought a CD at all, and would not have read any encyclopedia as a book. They certainly could not tell the difference between broadcast and cable, most likely, and had no idea that video was not demand, because it's going to be streaming for them at any given point of time. And all media will have an IP, be on demand with personal day parts, stream based, or be connected to social stream. That I think you can safely get a sense of where it's going to go. At the same time, in all the world of algorithms, I think we're all human beings, right? I mean, it's not everything's data. It's not like a matrix where some white algorithms or logos go and run and control our whole world. There is an oracle in all of us. That's about serendipity. We love new things, and they love browsing, and we want to take chances. And we like to hope that there is something which is going to happen which is not in my control, but it's going to surprise me at any given point of time. I think that's very, very important for us to think. And if most of us, they know, they don't know what they don't know. And that's why they're very disloyal and forgetful. And we have to find a way in which we manage as consumers a lot better. And therefore, communication must be very broad, very persistent, distinctive. And we have to cross the hurdles of relevance and engagement if we have to really be in the marketplace successful. That's about it from me. Question and answers from anybody in the market stage here. No questions means you're all fine with the prediction, so that's good.
Hey, G-Man, this is Vicky from Times.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question. The first thing that you mentioned about walled garden.
Yeah.
So the most common walled gardens we talk about are Google and Facebook. Nothing really outside of that besides Amazon. But you're sitting closer to brands, so you would probably know best that when we're talking so much of mobile, but there's not really much of walled gardens that we're talking in, like in the mobile sense. So there are two basic, as layman marketers out here, that we would understand. One is really the handsets like the Apple, Samsung, and Xiaomi's of the world. And the other, apart from the Facebook and Googles, we see like the chatting apps like WeChat and the other ones. If we have to give just a guess, what would be the next real walled garden in the mobile sense, out of the handsets or the non-content apps like the messaging apps? What would be your pick?
Okay. Let me just define the walled gardens first to you. When we say walled gardens, it is because of the way the universe is. Facebook has 1 billion plus users today. Facebook ecosystem is built on those 1 billion users. Yeah. Whatever they do in terms of engagement or recontacting or profiling and is limited to that 1 billion users. And when 1 billion grows, the garden grows. But it is within them, right?
Correct.
So even if you look at it from a mobile phones, you go to the Facebook system through the Facebook app, then you walk into the garden, whether you're going through a iOS system or an Android system. So I'm not going to call an iOS and Android as a walled garden, because that's not the way the consumers are, because consumers giving permission to foundation layers across utilities, services, and other stuff. So it's on the back of the utilities and not on the operating system, if I answered the question. Because walled garden is on the back of the individuals who reside in that particular garden, not the system.
But there are these releases which say that even Samsung, Apple definitely has, they've launched iAd, and Xiaomi is launching their own garden. So if the devices don't permit, the apps don't have much of control. Google does have their own mobile, like they have Motorola, they can do that. Facebook probably can do that. But what are the handset companies don't allow them? Who's stronger on the walled garden? Is it just the Google and Facebook, the companies that we talk about? Or would it be the controllers who are controlling their hardware level? Like basic, years back.
Okay. So it's a tough one, because individual walled gardens will never be significant enough to influence the entire system, even though how much ever big you are. It could be a 3 billion garden or a 5 billion garden, this does not matter. What matters is the person who can control the consumer's information and do something with the data there. So that's where the issue is. So whether it is an iOS system or the device manufacturers, the device ID and the individual's other further information either seeps into these kind of utility gardens or the system gardens. But the reality is that you'll have to coexist. But no one can be strong enough to influence.
Okay.
Who can influence is the consumer himself, not anybody else.
Can I ask another question around?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about native advertising. So I'm working for Times.
Good.
We're launching our own native ad platform right now. But I'm just saying, if a publisher, a big publisher like us, and we already have, like, say, display business already in, and we launch native, for any other publishers, small, medium, large, do you see them coexisting, native and regular display business, or do you see that there will be some sort of that display will merge with content, and probably the regular display will just be out?
I think the system will coexist for some more time. As I said, primarily because we still haven't cracked the commercial model, right? We're still struggling to find the way in which there can be a commerce attached to it. Today, brands want to be attached to a particular content because they believe it's giving them the flexibility to sort of look beyond the TVCs or standard advertising opportunities to engage. Okay. The trick lies in identifying the right content on which the brand can engage. It can come from any platform and any publisher, as long as the content with which the brand wants to associate is clear.
Right.
And that's where the trick is, because then the publishers have to look beyond their own repository of content they have, but sort of have an open source agreement with other system and look at content ecosystem rather than a publisher ecosystem. But that's why the commercial model is failing today.
Thank you so much, Yuval. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Prasun from Tawan. This side.
Yeah.
So actually, you spoke about journey, understand the journey and not the destination. So do you mean that we should understand the audiences about throughout what they do throughout the day, what will be the best time to engage them, through which media? Was in that context? Can you just elaborate more on the journey part?
Yeah, sure. Again, I'll go back to the walled gardens and the individual identities. The reality is that if we have to manage the tons and tons of data we have in the marketplace, the only way to know them better is, it's not the individual identity, but what the individual does in the system. His behavior, his likes, his tastes, his influences, his preferences. So when we talk about the journey, it's about what are the influencers that particular consumer has to change his decision from what he has thought before. So it could be rich media, as you talk about it, because that's an interference for him to change his decision. So journey from awareness to the standard model we have, right? Awareness, interest, desire, and action. And each stage, something else is happening to give him an awareness and changes the course correction. And even after all these things, he goes to the shop and buys something else because something else happens there as well. So the entire journey needs to be understood. And which is why the online behavior is more important than individual identity itself. I hope that answers the question.
Hi, I'm Akash from Spirix Media. I just wanted to ask that we are seeing exponential growth of e-commerce in India. What do you expect? Like what we are seeing with the e-commerce, they have a lot of user engagement, mainly because they're offering the cheap prices than in the actual market. So if we look at the future, when we expect the e-commerce sites are selling the prices as same as the market price, will the business be still financially viable or not? Or do you think they'll need to take some other measures for it to be viable?
Okay, there are two reasons to this. Yeah, one is we should de-link the valuation and the investment behind the e-commerce system to the reality in the marketplace, right? The reality in the marketplace is that in a complicated market like India, where going to the store to buying it versus ordering over the phone or through a system is going to make the life better as an utility. That's the future. And the mobile phones and the electronic ecosystem is helping the consumers to make the choice. And in an e-commerce platform, you can take real-time decisions, analyze 2 or 3 offers. I can go through 3 or 4 browsers and check the best deal and then go and make the permission. That's what the consumer wants. And it will take some time for the price war to settle. That's happening because of other business investments and the valuations, right? I don't think we should confuse the two. The reality is there is a device which will help you to make a choice a lot better and sooner and quicker. Fix the logistics, system should grow.
Thank you.
Hi,
Yep.
Hi, this is Harish from Lava Mobiles. When we speak of trends, or we should look at the history of internet. See, the growth of digital as a medium is not unidirectional. It's very random. Earlier, it used to be display advertising, then social came into place, and then mobile. Mobile 2 years back was a subset of display advertising. Now it's the leader. So when we say the trend 3 years or 4 years down the line, how do you see wearables, smart watches, smart TVs as a medium of advertising and to capture the customers?
Okay. I don't know how many of you read Tim Cook's interview today morning. He talked about some of these things in a much different manner. I'm just going to build on what he said. One of the simpler points, like on a mobile phone, I mean, in your device, you do this to expand, right? I mean, because you've gotten used to this now, and you press a button and something happens. I believe Apple, when they were trying to launch smartwatches, they realized that hard pressing the phone is a much better way to interact rather than doing this, because it's too small a screen. So we have to find a different way in which you can make the consumer interact on the device like a smartwatch, and that we're not yet cracked it. I hope to God that, like the way doing this was never thought about it 5 years back, we have to find something like this to make the entire smartwatch device more successful, and the jury is still out on that. I will buy it because I like it, but otherwise I don't think the reality is it's that simple. We are changing habits. Thank you.